Part of our philosophy with the Bulli meeting with AMCA is that we embrace all clubs, we embrace all makes and models, providing they're 35 years older. Now, we have with us today Hans Sprangers, President of the Vintage Motorcycle Club, and he's brought a couple of very, very interesting military machines, particularly pertinent because we're now 75 years since the end of the Second World War, and we've been lucky enough for Hans to bring along these wonderful machines. I'm going to hand over to Hans a little bit to tell us about these. Now, this Zundapp we have here, what year is it, Hans?
It's a 1934 Zundapp. Zundapp, you know, U's got two dots, so it's U, Zundapp. Zundapp is Zund is Spark, a factory that really started in World War I, making detonators. After the war, they went to building bikes.
And this one, there are obviously different models of Zundapp, sorry. Now this one's particularly unusual because it's actually a four-cylinder, flat four-cylinder, and this was made specifically for the military?
Not specifically for the military, but this is an early bike, 1934. There were obviously, whatever was left in 1940 were commissioned in the army, and this one served in Africa, I think. But this is an example of German engineering going completely overboard.
And completely overboard. It's a flat four-cylinder. We were saying it's actually got four stands to hold it in various positions.
Got four stands.
Four stands.
There's one at the front, one at the back, one underneath, and actually...
And one here.
The footboard.
Have a look at this.
Push. Yep,
and the footboard turns into a stand. Now, the other amazing thing about this, if I can get Matt over here for a second, is the gearbox. It's a four-speed gearbox, and if you look at the way that this works, it's not gear on gear, it's actually sprockets and duplex chains. You might just want to explain a little bit about this, Hans.
Yeah, so here is the actual to engage the gear. So this is neutral in the middle. When you push it to the left, it goes first gear. Push it to there, it goes second gear. Then you put that neutral, and then third, fourth.
And they tell me the schedule of servicing on these was just unbelievable, wasn't it?
They did give up on these bikes in 1940 because they were so unreliable. You know, they only lasted 2,000 kilometers, and then you know, even in the army, they replace the engines at every 2,000 kilometers.
Every 2,000 kilometers. So basically, if you rode one of these to Melbourne and back, you'd have to replace the engine.
Yeah. So they were railed into the front.
So this might have been some of their downfall.
Yes.
Was relying on Zundapps.
Well, no, because they gave up on building the four cylinders, and they made the two cylinders with the sidecar as well.
Of course.
Overhead valves produced more power, extremely reliable.
Yep. And of course, the fours, how many of these did they make, do you know?
They made around 5,000 of these.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
But if you consider, you know, that all the four-cylinder bikes produced prior to the Honda 750 came out, all four cylinders, was only sort of 60,000. That includes all Indians and FNs and so on and so on. Hondas produced 750,000. Wow,
four-cylinder bikes. Goodness me. Now, what we're going to do is compare some military vehicles. Now, we've got some, we saw an Army Indian, it's part of the auction. We've got WLA Harleys here, a brand new WLA Harley. Now, this little fellow here, this is an extraordinary bit of engineering. And this is what's called a well bike. And again, I might hand over to Hans, who is a bit of an expert on these things. And it was used as a paratrooper's bike. And this is, I'll just hold that for a second.
Yeah.
And what would happen was that the paratroopers would be dropped off, and in and around where they were dropped off would be these things. And what they would do, once they landed, they would run over, lift the handlebars up, run and start them, and then sort of head off to battle.
Yeah, these were parachuted in, so a couple of parachutists, and then dropped a couple of canisters. They were in a canister. The seat is supposed to go down. They opened the canister. They lifted the handlebars, you know, tightened this up.
Yep.
The fuel was already pumped under pressure,
Uh-huh.
and off they went.
Now, these were used in Arnhem.
These were used in Arnhem, yes, quite a few, because the drop zones were about 25 k's from the bridge. And, you know, when they first dropped, the Germans were obviously surprised. But within half an hour, the first of the soldiers on these bikes reached the bridge and actually sort of secured the bridge.
Wow, and that was quite a pivotal moment in the war as well.
Absolutely.
So these little bikes played quite a part in all that.
Yeah. And
Amazing. Little two-stroke Villiers engine, English-made Villiers engine.
100cc. This one is Villiers. There's also Excelsiors, which look very, very similar.
Uh-huh.
I had one registered, and it would do about 55 k's. So in town,
Wow.
you're a bit of a target. So I had a disability flag on it.
And which you obviously wouldn't if you were a paratrooper. So now what we might also do is have a look at the Zundapp. Can we start the Zundapp?
Well,
We'll give it a go.
it hasn't run for a while, but because
Coil ignition.
it's a very precious machine, and I have to tickle it a bit.
Now Hans has heard his leg falling off a ladder, so I might actually have to kick it for him.
Yeah.
So instead of actually playing with motorcycles, what he was doing was he was doing gardening. So to all of you out there, don't garden, stick with motorcycles, and you won't hurt yourself like Hans. Here we go.
I will hold the. Yeah.
Feels like it's on the beginnings.
Stuck.
Yeah. Can we put it in gear?
Yeah. Yeah. Try again.
That's better. Ooh.
It's a bit rich, unfortunately.
Fantastic.
The beauty of these bikes is, you know, as compared to contemporaries, you don't see anything. You don't see any valves moving. Everything is built in. I can take the engine cover off, and you'll see the. Just hold.
And if you can just look down here, Matt, it's got a large gear stick, much like a car one. So you can pop the engine cover off there.
So you got the generator.
Your generator up top.
Generator there, and the carburetor. The carburetor is actually tiny. It's only an 18 mil, you know, which is the same as some of the 50cc motorcycles, and you know, but it worked well.
Well,
The German
at least for 2,000 k's.
German machinery was designed for efficiency in running. Fuel consumption was low as compared to the Harleys and the Indians. The same with the German Jeeps. You know, the Volkswagens used about half the amount of fuel as the Americans, and that was a big thing. At the front is also a cover. We have the distributor there. The coil was originally there as well. I put it on the side because all about this machine is trying to keep the engine cool. We made some serious modifications on it. One bigger oil pump, because they were so unreliable. After the war, they worked out what to do. You know, in the sort of 70s, 80s, 90s, in the last few years. One specialist in Germany, Michael Ackner, who gave us the tips what to do, because I had 2 seizures before we received the tips of what to do. And that was bigger oil pump, change the direction of the oil. So in other words, the filter sits on the pressure side at the end. We took that up and plugged actually the exit of the oil into the engine. We plugged that. So all the oil stays in the engine and pushes itself out in the engine. Bored out the camshaft, some bigger channels. So far it's good, but you know, I'm always very conscious. I put an oil pressure gauge here. I put an oil temperature gauge here. We put deflectors on the front to direct the air down. There's louvers in the front here. There's louvers on the cover here, all to get air into the engine to to cool the block down.
Fantastic.
But
Well,
it's reasonably reliable. I've taken it onto a Bathurst run
Yep.
a couple of times, and it goes very well.
I've actually seen this in action. So thanks very much, Hans, for bringing these in. Two amazing machines, two very, very different purposes, but very, very purpose-built. Hang in there. We're going to be seeing Graham Goodwin's incredible machines in just one moment.